Welcome back, everybody. This is Rashad Woods, host of the T.R.O.N podcast, The Randomness of Nothing. And I got to be honest, I'm here with a really special guest today. All things paranormal, right out of Portland, Oregon. We have Mr. Jason Hassler. Welcome, and thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I got a chance to look at your background. We chatted briefly. How exactly did you get started in the field of paranoia? You mentioned some things about your childhood. Care to expand on that a little bit?
Okay, so when I was a kid, I grew up in a haunted house. So it just it always left me with more questions than answers. So, everybody's talking about when it comes, I grew up religious, I'm not religious now, but when I was young, I was going to church and stuff. So haunted houses didn't make sense for, going to church, or when you go to heaven when you die, right? Or hell. So it didn't make any sense to me. I kind of lost my sense of religion at that point. But we'd have things like there was an old man coughing in the bathroom almost every night, but of course there wasn't an old man there, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. There was all kids grow up and there's a monster in the closet or whatever. But I would see things in my closet, which was weird because my bedroom was connected, my closet was connected to my brother's closet. And when we grew up, we talked about, there was a guy that was in the closet that literally, we both saw it. So that's kind of weird. And then we had several different family members live in that household throughout the years, in the house anyway. Mm-hmm. So my uncle had gone into that closet at one point. I think he was changing a light bulb in there, and the door got shut behind him and he couldn't get out for a little while. So
you're having these instances as kids. Now, you always hear about how kids can see things, but adults can't. Did you ever try to say, hey, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, this is really happening? And what was their reaction to you saying that? Did they think you had an overactive imagination, or was it a case of we need to look into this further?
Well, they knew that the house was haunted. So, but of course they're not going to tell the kids hey, yeah, the house is haunted. Go ahead and go in there and brush your teeth and go to bed, so they would just tell us, you're okay. It's your imagination, whatever, that kind of stuff. They didn't really tell us kids what was going on. But as an adult, we pretty much, we learned about it as we were getting older and stuff, especially once we moved out of the house and they would tell us.
Well, I guess at the time they had to keep you calm on a day-by-day basis. Now, was it just a case of just one ghost, right? So just to back up a little bit, what's the specific definition of paranormal? Because some people think ghost, some people think a figure. What exactly, if I saw something or you saw something, what is the definition of a paranormal thing?
It just kind of depends on opinion, really. So a lot of people think that orbs are paranormal. A lot of people think that, you can get, as far as vision goes, it's rare to see something, but it does happen. I mean, I imagine it happens to kids more because kids don't know they're not supposed to see stuff. So,
right.
As adults, we're conditioned that we don't see ghosts, but kids, like my daughter, when she was young, she would see my her great grandma, which was my grandmother. And she would know things about her that she just shouldn't know because she wasn't alive. They weren't alive at the same time. Yeah.
So she dive into specifics of what she saw. In respect, with no picture identification, saying great grandma looks like X, Y, and Z, and you'd be like, how would you know that?
She'd say stuff like, she would say stuff like, well, she thinks I would look pretty in dresses and stuff like that, which is something my grandma would tell my mom when she was little. So that was, And then there was a fire at one point, and she was talking about the fire at her house, and the old man across the street came over, and I'm like, whatever. We're just like, that's, cool,
So you're the director in the Portland chapter of, it looks to be Big River Paranormal. So I saw that it was started originally in the Boise area back in 2000, the early 2000s, and you've been with them since 2017.
That's correct, yeah.
You want to give us a little background about, I see you guys have done a number of searches on various properties. It's penitentiaries, old historical places, and private residences. You kind of want to give a little background on what you do?
Yeah, so Big River Paranormal has been around just over, I think, 20 years, and they've done over 1,000 investigations. So whether that be residential or commercial. So what we do is we will receive requests from, say, we'll get somebody hit us up on our Facebook or something to say, hey, I'm in your area. And I've got, I think I got this, and this going on. I think I have a ghost.
Right.
So our job is what I'll do is also the case managers, I'll call that client and I'll have a discussion with them to see exactly what they have going on. So, and then see, is this the right case for our team? Is it safe to go out there? That kind of stuff. Because sometimes it's a mental health issue. I mean, we're not doctors, so we can't diagnose, but sometimes it's pretty obvious. Sometimes it's a drug issue. Sometimes it's it's just a miseducation issue. So our job is to go out there and educate them
Yeah.
and try to help them find a logical explanation for what they're experiencing. And most of the time we can do that, but sometimes we find things that we can't explain.
Right. So I got a number of questions because this is really fascinating.
Yeah, sure.
What kind of equipment? Like I know nothing about paranormal equipment. So when I was
Mhm.
when I saw that you guys went to these various places and you've had the news, you guys do charitable work as well too. What equipment do you do to validate if there's something that somebody says is there, and then you guys can validate? Yeah, there's something more behind this of what these people are seeing or hearing.
We like to keep things very basic. Usually, it's a video recorder and a digital audio recorder. It's our main source of equipment for like trying to document paranormal activity.
Okay. And so, how successful has it been? Obviously, I saw that you guys are strict on people's privacy, which is great too.
Yeah.
But have you been able to validate, or is there any sort of validation process? There really is something here.
It's really tough to say that for sure there's something here. I mean, we can have all the experiences and stuff, but we haven't proven anything. So, I mean, everything that we believe in the paranormal research is a theory at this point. Nothing has actually been proven. So we could say, hey, these are the recordings that we got. This makes sense to us, but what can we prove? We can't really say for sure, yep, this is a ghost, or yeah, this is paranormal. We have to say we believe it to be, but like we haven't proven anything. So
right. So I saw you guys are really popular. You guys get a number of people who volunteer with you guys, which is really awesome because in all things you need groups of like-minded people to be successful in your endeavors. So how did people start reaching out to you? How did this thing kind of grow organically?
So it pretty much social media is how you do it now. I mean, like 20 years ago, I don't know how they did it because I wasn't a part of the team, and social media wasn't such a big thing 20 years ago as it is now. Like that's how we do everything. Right. So, we have a website and social media, and we are part of the TAPS family, which is the Atlantic Paranormal Society, which is originated from the TV show Ghost Hunters. So
I saw that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So if they get a case in Idaho, Washington, or Oregon, they'll send it to us, and then we get to take that case and see what we can do to help.
So for people who are skeptical or people who sit back, I'll just be honest with you. Like, how do you convince the skeptics that, okay, well, you don't have to believe what I'm telling you, but this is, what's hearing. I'm sure you've had people who swore up and down, I'm not the type of person that ever call you guys that I've ever, have this, but something I'm hearing or seeing something, or my kid is seeing something. So how do you convince the skeptics that, or how did they come to you? What kind of people do you see that are reaching out to you guys?
We get a little bit of everybody. I would say the majority of people that contact us watch too much paranormal TV. So that's probably the majority of people that contact us. But we do have people that will contact us and be like, I think I'm crazy. I don't believe in this, but this is what I got going on. Can you come and validate this for me? Or can you come please explain to me what I'm really seeing? And
for sure.
We get some of those. And then, we get people that will just reach out to us because they think we're nuts.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean, like, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And as we go into each investigation, we always try to go in skeptical as well. So
absolutely.
That's the best way to do it.
So these abandoned buildings, like, I mean, I'll be honest with you, you're braver than I am. I'm not going inside of no abandoned building, I consider myself a pretty even keel kind of guy. But some of the places you went to, for me, it's like, I'd rather see, on TV or see a nice photograph than walking in there. What's your process to going into some of these places? Because obviously some of them can be pretty hazardous on the inside and pretty dangerous if they've been abandoned and or, not exactly had living people in them, so to speak.
Yeah. So our process for that is we have to get permission from the owner of the place. So we never go in anywhere we don't have permission to go into. And so that process kind of weeds itself out as far as unsafe places, because most of the time people aren't going to let us come into their place if we're going to fall through the floor and that kind of stuff.
Understood.
But if we do find ourselves in a situation where we go into a place and it's not safe, we will leave because we don't want to get anybody hurt, and we have a responsibility to ourselves and the client not to die there and create more spirits.
And then haunt the place yourselves, right, for the next.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So one question I did have is, so before it seemed like, correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of my ignorance on this topic, people who were in paranormal or things that were not of this world or what people thought they didn't see on a day-by-day basis, it's really been enhanced by the use of technology where more people have access to sit back and put their phone up and like, yo, do you see, do you hear X, Y, and Z? Has that helped you or hurt this type of business that you're in?
A little bit of both, really. Because, like, everybody's got Ring cameras now in their houses and that, and they're like, oh, look at these ghosts I have in my house. And it's like, look, you have bugs, or you had it, it's dusty in there, or, outside, like, especially if it's outside, if it's your door Ring camera, there's so much, moisture in the air, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
We have all sorts of, so it's helpful because sometimes you do get stuff that you can't explain on those cameras. But most of the time it's very easy to explain. But we get people a lot that are like, nope, that's a ghost. I know what it is. I had one woman, she came to me at a conference that we were doing, and she had a picture of a big blue orb in her living room. Right. And she said, what is this? So we explained to her, like, orbs are, it could be anything in the air, really. It's just that, and she was like, no, this is my grandma, because the orb is the same color as the shirt we buried her in. So at that point, you just kind of let them have what they, like, it's not her grandma, but like, it's,
if she's made up her mind, right, you're kind of stuck in that little middle zone of, you kind of have to believe.
So sometimes we have to break people's hearts sometimes and be like, your picture is not a ghost. But
I gotta ask you, have you ever, I mean, sure, this has probably been asked, have you ever definitively seen a ghost?
For what I believe, yes. I've seen things often. Can I prove it to you? No. It's kind of something that you have to see on your own to have proof, and
right.
A lot of people have, and a lot of people, it's tough because it depends on each person's religious beliefs and all that kind of stuff, and how they're going to take everything. Well, a lot of people are trying to look for an explanation that's not going to scare them and let them sleep at night.
Right. So one of the questions sometimes people always ask, and I've asked myself this question sometimes about things that are kind of unknown. How come, or at least in your experience, do people always tend to only see these things in the dark, at night, and then they're usually quote unquote by themselves? So I think a lot of people are sitting back, have said, well, I'll believe it if it's, seeing me in the grocery store, or I'm seeing it in my car when I'm driving X, Y, and Z. Or in your experience, do things of this nature gravitate towards certain locations or times or dark areas?
As far as darkness goes, I think that people investigate in the dark because it's the thrill factor. Right, I mean, sometimes, we don't always have the lights on and stuff, but like, you're just as likely to see something in the daylight as you are the nighttime. It's just like, if a client calls us and says, hey, this is what I'm seeing is happening in the afternoon, then we're going to investigate in the afternoon. So I think it's most the dark stuff is, honestly, it takes away your senses of being able to see things, and then of course you're in the dark and you see shadows, and then it plays with your imagination, and you don't really know what you're seeing in the dark because your eyes play tricks on you and all that. So investigating in the dark isn't necessarily something we have to do. I mean, we do it because a lot of times it's nighttime when we investigate as well, because sometimes it's just easier. One of the reasons people investigate at night is because, like, maybe the business is open during the day, so you have to go in there and investigate at night. And also there's less traffic, less people around at night as well, so it's easier to control the environment.
For sure. Do you see that you have more of a location where things tend to happen? Is it an abandoned building? Is it an old house? Is it a church? Is it a graveyard? Is there a particular location where you've seen things that happen in more of this particular type of location or area?
Probably, like, not really. I mean, historical locations are really fun to investigate and often have, more, in my opinion, maybe I'm just more interested in it. Mm-hmm. But we tend to get historical locations tend to be really cool places to investigate.
That penitentiary that you guys do now, you're braver than I am, because I don't know if I'll be able to walk around in no prison. There's something about that. So you want to give a little bit of insight about that? I seem like that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool place, the Idaho State Penitentiary. It's been closed since the 70s, but yeah, it's a very interesting place. Like, the first time I was there, I was kind of nervous that it was going to be, feel dark and dreary and just bad because it's a prison. And some of the areas kind of do, but again, it also feels very home-like. And because that was people's homes, they weren't going home, so they were making the best of it there. So it's not as scary as you would think. I mean, there are some areas there, like death row is kind of sketchy, because it's death row, Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So just to pivot a bit, you're also on a radio station as well too. You do a podcast the second Thursday of every single month on KXRW Vancouver. How's that podcast going? How did you get involved with that?
I was doing a podcast just like on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I've always wanted to do radio, and I thought, And I found the radio station here in Vancouver, Washington, and was like, I'm going to reach out to them and see if they'd be interested in taking the show. And sure enough, they were. So I've been doing that for about a year now. It's been airing on the radio now. So
that's awesome.
It's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations to it.
Thank you.
So I got a question when it comes to paranormal, and this is, I got a dozens of questions. How does one get, what's the governing body, the licensing, is there some sort of process that you actually have to adhere to do the work that you do and with your volunteers as well?
Unfortunately, there really isn't. So we have different ethics and stuff we have with our team, but as far as everybody, there's just not. So you get a bunch of people that just don't know what they're doing. And I always tell people in the paranormal, stick to what you understand and what you're qualified for. It's like right now, because of the TV shows and everything, everybody's become a psychic, there are psychics out there who are legit, but
right.
Everybody is not a psychic. So we get all these psychics, and then we get teams that really don't know what they're doing. They've snuck into some graveyards in the middle of the night, and they're posting themselves on YouTube, and they're cussing at the spirits and the unethical things that you don't want to do. And then they find themselves, because they've posted themselves all over YouTube, they get clients calling them saying, hey, can you come to my house and help me? Well, they don't have any experience and qualifications to help those people. So then they go in and feed them a bunch of BS, and then I have to go clean it up.
That's terrible. So, unfortunately, the internet can attract people to something they think they can make a quick buck or get famous for, right? So, and that's irrespective of every profession, right? Everybody suddenly thinks they can build a house because they watch HGTV for 5 minutes, right? So... and then they get the wake-up call when they start actually trying to do it. So you have groups of volunteers. You have a pretty sizable team of people as well, too. So when they come up to you, they say, hey, Jason, I want to get involved with this. What do you have to do to get involved with your group?
There's an application process. So they fill out an application just like with any job. And then just like with any other job, we would interview that person and try to figure out if they're a good fit for our team. And if they are, then we bring them on. They have a passive background check as well. Of course, we can't bring criminals into people's homes.
Right. So you guys are obviously right now just in the, I saw Idaho, Washington, Oregon area. Do you deal with other chapters around the country as well, too? Do you have any sort of national groups you meet with or any sort of conferences that you have on a larger scale?
Yeah, they do have a TAPS family reunion, which is, they try to do it like yearly or every other year, but COVID really kind of put a stop to that. So we're actually working on doing one soon, but they just meet up at different haunted locations, and just kind of get a hotel room together. Everybody stays in the same town and like gets together and talks about paranormal stuff, and with the guys from the TV show, the Ghost Hunters TV show, they're always there. Yeah, so it's kind of cool. It's one of those things that we don't talk about until after the fact because it's a confidential thing. Because we do go into areas and investigate. Right. So we don't tell people, hey, we got this coming up in June, and this is the town we're going to be in.
Right, and it keeps it quiet, and you can do your job and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So
we can have a lot more fun.
For sure. So one of the questions is that so there's obviously fraudsters and people that do illegal things in the industry and as well too. But and so you addressed that. But one of the things I also wanted to ask was what form does a ghost take? Is it a form of what somebody used to look like? Is it their deceased form that you've seen? Is it what exactly? Because we've seen movies and we've seen TV shows. Yeah. What exactly, if somebody saw one, would they actually see?
It really varies. I mean, some people have seen full body apparitions, and that they would look like how they looked when they were alive. Right. So it really just kind of depends. I mean, like, have we proven that anything is a ghost? No, but I mean, I've seen some things like, sometimes it's a shadow, sometimes it's just something you see out of the corner of your eye, and sometimes it's your imagination. You have to decide what's what, especially when you're on an investigation. You're trying so hard you want to see something. Mm-hmm. So you have to decipher in your mind, did I see that, or was it my mind, or what it was? Right. So as far, I mean, there's been all sorts of different, some people see balls of light, some people just pretty much anything you can't really explain that you see. You see, some people see partial apparitions, so it's like just like their head or just like their legs or whatever. Right. It just kind of depends, like it's really kind of wide open, really.
Okay. So from a personal perspective, what's the scariest one you've been on? Obviously, I know if it's confidential, that's fine, but can you give a general overview where you and your team were like, yo, man, this is next level stuff? Or even on a personal level that you've seen?
Honestly, the the most difficult part about being a paranormal investigator and dealing with is the clients that we deal with. So they're way scarier sometimes than, because you don't really know what you're getting into till you show up on location. We did have one residential years ago where we got there. The guy said he's got a wife and a couple of dogs, and he was telling us that there was a spirit in his house that was hurting him and like pulling him out of bed at night and that kind of stuff. Logically, from a logical standpoint, I was pretty sure that wasn't going on, but I'm not there to see, so we have to go check it out. So
right.
We get there is no wife, and there's evidence of dogs, but they're not there. So I just kind of assumed that maybe she wasn't comfortable with the investigation. Maybe they went and got a hotel for the night.
For sure. I
didn't really ask. Yeah. So I could tell pretty much right away that this guy, sometimes you could just tell that people struggle from, chemical dependency type stuff. I'm not an expert, but sometimes you could just tell.
For sure.
And so he was telling us about, he's got a demon in his house and it speaks French, and thankfully he does too, so he understands it, which was odd.
Right.
So then I started saying, he's got hunting knives, just like, you wouldn't just leave your hunting knife strategically placed out there. It was just odd places to leave the hunting knives. So I was like, trying to figure out what this guy's deal was. And so I had him go. We set up a camera in his bedroom, and we're like, okay, go to bed. Let's see if it pulls you out of bed on the camera. And of course, he fakes like it does, as I knew he was going to, which is why I set it up. I didn't think a demon was going to pull him out of bed on camera, just to try to, so I could get on video what was going on with this guy. So, is it a mental health issue? Is he just trying to play games with us? Is he on drugs? What's his motive? And I think with this guy, it was a little bit of all of those things. So at one point, he's like, we need to go back. The demon wants us to go outside and go into my shed in the backyard.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I said, well, we're not going to do that, because I don't want to go find the wife and the dogs in the shed.
Of course not.
That was my first thought. Well, what's the shed? Right. So I was like, sorry, we're not going to go in your shed. And he was getting mad. He's like, the demon's getting really upset. It says we have to go in the effing shed. And I'm like, we're not going into your shed. So at that point, we just kind of wrapped it up. Like, we didn't put stuff away. We just grabbed our stuff and just threw it in the car and just kind of bounced. Yeah, it was kind of one of those situations where, we looked over the video and the audio and stuff. And of course, we didn't find anything. I basically just told him, like, have you ever, gotten help for narcotics issues? And he said, well, yeah, like I actually missed an A meeting when you guys were, well, maybe you should go back to those.
Absolutely.
Start there and then, maybe,
step by step. And, I don't want to, obviously I'm not making fun of alcoholism, because the guy clearly had some issues that were irrespective of what he thought he was seeing, or he could have just been attention starved and lonely. But I'm sure sometimes that could take the case of it too. You're sitting here right now, probably in other places that you didn't go inside that shed either, because who knows, what else he was dealing with.
I always look at it as a client, like he may have a drug issue or he may have an alcohol problem. That also doesn't mean he doesn't have something paranormal going on.
Right.
Because honestly, there's a theory that if you're on drugs and stuff like that, you have a warped sense of what reality is, because you can't make sense of things because you're on drugs, that maybe spirits can take advantage of that.
Okay, so people who said that things have happened to them and they've had scars and bruises and things of that nature, is that valid information to say that can happen to people, where they can wake up and have scratches? And
I've never seen it. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. People claim that things happen all the time. Usually there's logical explanation, especially if you're waking up with scratches or bruises or stuff, because you don't know what you did in your sleep.
Right.
Some of us are maybe we had an itch in our sleep and maybe we scratched it too much, and we don't know that in our sleep, or maybe we smacked our knee on the wall or something. I don't know, but like we try to always find logical explanations for that. But I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that I've never seen it. So
got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So that's pretty cool, right? So you guys always try to find the reasonable explanation behind what something could happen to somebody. It's a kind of a process of elimination, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
We never just jump in going, okay, this has to be a ghost. In fact, we usually, one of the main things I do is I don't let my team know what we're going into. So they have no idea. I'll be like, hey, meet me at this location, but it's like, somewhere else in the town. Like the other day we had I was like, meet me in the Walmart parking lot, because I don't want to tell anybody where we're going. So everybody met me in the Walmart parking lot. I'm like, oh, everybody follow me where we're looking. That way they're not, if I tell them where we're going, they can jump online and read the stuff.
Right. Have somebody could have made a post and they could have preconceived notions of what they thought they were going to see amongst themselves. And that makes a lot of sense. So obviously to protect the anonymity of your customers is really good though. But I'm sure at some point that there was something that was really valid from somebody who didn't have anything before. Are multiple people from your teams all able to see things, or is it just exclusive to one person, or even hear anything in particular? Do you hear clear words, sentences, echoes, things of that nature?
We don't have, I mean, we have people on our team that say they're sensitive to, like psychic type stuff, but we don't really use that in our investigations very much because we can't prove that. Now, we tell those people, like, if you come across something, write it down. Don't say anything, like if you get a name or whatever, or, that way, if afterwards, when we're doing our debriefing, we're talking about, hey, did anybody have experiences? If they have that written down and then somebody else is like, oh, I saw that too, then we can be like, okay, maybe, like, or like if the psychic person that claims to be psychic on our team, if they, okay, so I'm getting this name. If in our historical research, we found that name on our historical research and somebody used to live there, we could say, hey, that's kind of cool because, they didn't have any of the information, but they did come up with the correct name. So that's that kind of stuff we use, but we don't have somebody come in and being like, oh, there's a man over here. We don't do that.
For sure.
Because then everybody sees a man over there at that point.
Understood.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been kind of interesting because I don't get a chance very often to ask kind of questions like these. Did you have any questions for me?
Not really, no. I mean, like, where does your podcast usually air? Where do people reach out to you at?
Well, it's funny because I started it right now, organically filming the episodes, and I'm going to have it on all the major podcast platforms. I'm kind of learning. I'm doing this solo, right? And I was fortunate enough that you responded back to me because what you do is so out of left field, so to speak. It's like out of my zone of people I would normally talk to. And so you'll hear it on all the major channels coming up soon. I'll make sure to give you a link on our episode in particular. But I wanted to make sure that I talked to people who had fields of interest and things that were interesting to me. That's kind of why I named it the T.R.O.N podcast, because I think it's important to keep your mind open to various different things, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a way something is built, whether somebody who invests in paranoia. I'd like to learn about, UFOs and things like that, just because that's not something that you could ever, people do these things for a living, right? And it's important to actually hear from people who do it for a living because you can self-educate, but sometimes you can only take that so far.
Yeah. That's why I try to work with other paranormal teams and people that do this because you can learn stuff. You can learn things that you don't think about. Like,
absolutely.
I have a friend who's a psychic medium. His name is William Becker. He's a really good guy. And he took me into this place called the Ermitinger House, which is in Oregon City. And I don't know if you know the story of Portland, but there was a guy when they were trying to name the city of Portland. There was a guy from Portland, Maine, and a guy from Boston. Yeah. And each one of them wanted to name the new city after their city. Right. So they did a coin toss, and they believe that coin toss was in the Ermitinger House. And of course, the guy from Portland won. Okay. So this house is a very historic house in Oregon City. And they do like 2 ghost tours and stuff there. It's supposed to be haunted. It's very historic. It's a cool place. So he takes me in there and just like lets me walk around and check the place out.
Right.
And then we go out to coffee afterwards. And he says to me, when you go into a historic location like that, if you walk into that, you have to think about who are the spirits that occupy this house. If you want to communicate with them, who are they? So when you walk into that location, if you're wearing a hat and these spirits are from like 1890s or whatever, you've now offended them because you don't wear hats in the house.
Right. Inside the houses and things like that.
Yeah. And then he's talking about, and then he was like, don't use their first names. If you think it's, this person is supposed to haunt this house, you need to address them as Mr. or Mrs., not their first name, because that was offensive to them back then as well. And just stuff like that you don't think about, like common sense stuff. But because he said the spirits, they don't like your hat. And I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense.
Right. And unless you were told that, you would have never crossed your mind to even think like that.
It never would. I wouldn't. I mean, maybe eventually, but you have to use a lot of common sense stuff like that. You might not think about. So that's why it's good to learn from other teams and other people and never think that you know everything. You're like, be open-minded.
Of course. Yeah, and it helps to have this historical reference of something before you actually get into it. Like, the medium that he's in, he's obviously doing all the background search to say, okay, who would have occupied this? And I could find the best opportunity to have what I'm looking for here and who would have occupied this particular situation. Do you go out of your tri-state area for any reason at all?
If I could afford to, absolutely. Like I would travel anywhere if I had the budget for it. So
of course. Do you guys do houses? I mean, has anybody ever asked you to do like a boat or anything kind of the cabin in the woods kind of thing or anything like that?
Nothing terribly. I did have a woman call me and say her son that lives in an RV outside their house has a demon in his RV and he can't leave because it won't let him leave and it's doing inappropriate things to him. And I was like, I don't think I'm gonna go.
No. We're good. I'm good.
I was like, has your son seen? Because he's an adult, you know. Yeah. And I was like, has he seen his doctor and talked to his doctor about the things he's? Well, they'll lock him up. Yeah, they'll stabilize him. That's for sure. Right. You know but like he lost his job and everything because he won't. He says this demon won't leave his trailer or whatever. Won't let him leave. So.
Yeah, that's a deep one, and I wish I was qualified to give a good answer about that one. So hopefully.
It has to be a mental health issue. Maybe I'm going to try that so I don't have to go to work. Well, but it's sad because, I mean, this guy really believed, because I spoke to him too, and he really believed that those things were happening to him. I mean, he was telling me that inappropriate things were happening to him.
Yeah, he needs professional help at that point.
Yeah.
He really does.
Yeah, nothing I can do for him.
No, man, that's above the skies and scope of your job, if you're a job title. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't have any other particular questions. I just never got a chance to really pick the brain of the paranormal. I think this has been an awesome opportunity to speak with you. Is there some information that we can make sure? Obviously, you're very popular on your own. You don't need me, to spread your information, but you just want to give it to our audience real quick of where they can locate you? Yeah, we're at bigriverparanormal.com. And then you can listen to my show at Hassling the Paranormal. That's what the name of the show, but it's on KXRW.FM. All my episodes are there. You can listen to them online, or if you're in the area, it's every second Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. and then re-airs on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So. Yeah, and it just throws out a random show every Wednesday. I don't even know which one it's going to be, so it's kind of cool. I have to listen to myself to find out which one they're airing. So, so that's 99.9, right? That's correct. You're awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time for coming on the T.R.O.N podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Hassler, thank you. Thanks for having me.